Bill O'Chee joins me in the studio. He's the former National Senator for Queensland. So if you have a parent who was born overseas, you make up half of Australia's population. If you were born overseas, you make up almost a third of the population. There are more than 8 million of you, and more than likely you came from, and this is in order, from India, England, China and New Zealand. Interestingly, about a third of the Australian population in 1891 was also born overseas. That declined to a low of 10% in 1947. Obviously because of the war, and then grew steadily after the post-Second World War migration wave, and then again from 1971. These figures are all from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And no doubt you will have heard in the past few weeks that Australia has one of the most successful multicultural societies in the world. Now that word means multicultural. It's generally accepted as meaning an acceptance of cultural diversity within society. And there are some legal extensions to that as well, but we're not going to get in the weeds. So Bill O'Chee, former National Senator for Queensland, is here to talk about the term monoculture and multiculturalism. Welcome, Bill.
Kathy, very nice to be with you and with your listeners.
Tell us about your heritage and family makeup.
Well, my mother's side of the family is ethnic Irish, and my father's side of the family is Chinese. And my great-grandparents, my Chinese great-grandparents, came to Australia in 1879. So we've been here a very long time.
A lot of Chinese haven't they?
They have. And, you know, we've had the opportunity over generations to play our part in making Australia the country that it is. And you can't talk about Chinese history, Australian history rather, without talking about the Chinese, the Indians and all the other people who've played a role in Australia. And, you know, even Anzac, everybody forgets that the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps that landed in Gallipoli contained 4 battalions of Indian infantry, Gurkhas, 2 batteries of Indian mountain artillery, and the Jews of the Zion Mule Corps. So that was pretty multicultural as well.
Can I talk about Australian Jewish heritage? Your wife is Jewish.
She is indeed.
And your children?
Well, they get to choose.
They get to choose.
Because it's a free country.
So that's quite a mix, and I don't want to use the word melting pot because melting pot generally is used, I think, in relation to assimilation, where you all join and you all become the same and you're all mixed in and there's no identification. I've read that you don't like the term multiculturalism. Is that right?
Look, I think that people get very wrapped up in multiculturalism. What I believe in is an Australia where people are free to think for themselves. People are free to have their own personal identity, and where you're not judged on the colour of your skin or the shape of your eyes. And that really is what people who talk about monoculture are really trying to do.
So do you think that the term monoculture is just code for white people, Northern Europeans?
It is. And, you know, there's been this sort of attempt by Pauline Hanson to walk back from monoculture and say, oh, the Socceroos are mono.
What do you think about that? Do you think, to me, that's almost like doublespeak, because monoculture, if you think about it, in terms of agriculture, right, and I have a landline background, it means growing a single uniform crop over a large area. In society, it means sharing a single set of beliefs, values, religion and way of life. What's wrong with that?
Well, it's rubbish because it's trying to create an Australia which has never been. And just think about this. For me, I cook 4 or 5 hours on a Sunday afternoon. I cook.
Do you do one of those big Chinese banquets?
Chinese banquet.
Do you do it on time though? Because in my experience with my husband's family, it was never on time.
Well, look, punctuality isn't always a great virtue, right?
Okay.
But I will do a big Chinese meal because it's part of my culture. And you've got to understand that food is more than a feed. When I cook Chinese food, it's out of deep respect to my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, right? And it represents where we've come from, but also the part we play in Australia. Because I'm an Australian, but I come here with a different mindset, a different way of looking at the world.
Does that mean you share Australian values?
I believe in an Australia where you don't hate your fellow Australians. And I really genuinely love people with a different point of view. And I don't believe that you can say you love your country, or let alone want to run your country, if you spend a lot of your time hating fellow Australians.
Bibi from Capalaba has sent in a text that says, does monoculture mean we all have to listen to country music? What sport we must follow? Definitely not soccer to SBS. And we'll have to listen out for our neighbours speaking other than English. Whoops, my mother was born overseas. She came from England in the 1920s when she was 6. So that's someone whose parent was born overseas. And look, I saw a really interesting meme on social media, which was, let's go back to, as you have described it, as this era that never existed in Australia, and look at what fish and chips would be like. No chicken salt, nothing interesting. The food issue, like you say, it's more than a feed because it connects you to your culture. How do you feel about people speaking a language other than English at home?
I love it. I love it because, you know, that makes us better able to participate in the world. I'm really, really, really sad that because of the White Australia policy, I wasn't allowed to learn Chinese. So there's always that little part of me, I'm an Australian, but there's a little part of me that says I've missed out on something. Because if you have another language, you can tap into a whole different way of thinking. You can tap into different writers, you can tap into different music, and that makes you a more rounded person. And that's what makes societies succeed. If we all think the same way, we can never innovate. We can never find ways to be better. We can only go backwards.
23 minutes past 9 on 612 ABC Brisbane. My name is Kathy Schnitzeling, and my guest is Bill O'Chee, former National Senator for Queensland. If we can just return to the Socceroos, given that everything is World Cup at the moment, the team is made up of 15 different ethnic and cultural backgrounds. One Nation's Pauline Hanson says this is what she means when she talks about monoculture. They're all playing in the green and gold. What do you think of that explanation?
Well, that's just rubbish. I mean, it really is rubbish. Every one of those different ethnic backgrounds brings a different way of seeing the world. Now, it's really interesting that this comes from a politician who, you know, proclaims her love of Australia, but was perfectly willing to say goodbye forever to Australia in 2010. She was going to move to the UK, presumably because she thought there'd be people like her. And she came back saying she couldn't live in Britain or Europe because it was full of migrants.
Oh.
Now, of course, she was a migrant, so I assume she means migrants that are different looking from her. So again, it all comes back to race. And this suggestion that the Socceroos monoculture is rubbish, she knows it, we know it. She's just been caught out, indulging her hatred, and now has to find a way to climb out of it. And what I say is, if somebody lies about the past, about what they've said in the past, they're probably going to lie to you about the future.
As a former politician, in fact, you were Senator for Queensland and you lost your seat to a One Nation candidate back in the 90s. What is your opinion of the success of promoting a policy of monoculture in a country where millions of the 18 million enrolled voters or their descendants were born overseas?
Well, it's just a horrific thing. It's un-Australian.
But how successful would it be if the part of if so many people in the electorate are from overseas?
Well, it won't succeed because you want every person in this country to work wholeheartedly for their nation. If you say to people, oh, well, we're not going to take any more people who look like you, then how committed are those people going to be to creating a better Australia? It's actually a way of diminishing the unity and love that people feel for their country.
Australian values gets thrown around a lot by politicians. What do you think that actually means?
Look, everybody's got their views around the edges, but I'll tell you what I believe Australian values really come down to. A country which is fair and a country which is free. Now, I'll tell you that Pauline Hanson is un-Australian because she believes in a country which is unfair, where I am discriminated against because of the colour of my skin. And she believes in a country which is unfree because in her Australia, there's only one person who's going to tell you what you can think. The idea that she's going to tell me what I can think, what I can believe in, is unfree.
Yet, Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party is increasing in popularity if we are to look at the polls.
Look, she's got some support in the polls because there are people who say, oh, well, she says what I think. But the truth is that she's the gob off at the barbecue. You know, we've all had this person turn up at the barbecue and say, I don't like so-and-so, he's a this and she's a that. And we all get a bit tired of them after a while and we don't invite them back to the barbecue because they're not really the people that we want to associate with. So let's get all this stuff out in the open and then let's really sit back and say, do we want an Australia which is built on hate? And I'll tell you that, and this is a strange story, Kathy, one of my friends from politics, somebody that I liked immensely, was Bob Hawke. We disagreed about politics, but he was very kind to me, and I liked him a lot, because irrespective of what we might say about our other's political beliefs, we both loved Australia for what it could be and for what it could allow its people to be. We believed in an Australia where there were no limits on you because of your ethnic background, right? And an Australia which was free. And that's what we need. We need people in Parliament who are going to love their fellow citizens. And if you hate your fellow citizens, you're not fit to represent this country.
I do have a question here. What do you think about quasi-monocultural enclaves like Robertson in Brisbane and Lakemba in Sydney?
Look, people are free to live wherever they want. I don't live in Sunnybank, but I will admit I go down there because the best butcher shop in Brisbane is there, and that's where I get my pork belly. But we've got to be free to choose where we're going to live and how we're going to see the world. So what are we going to do? We're going to put a quota on how many Muslims can live in this suburb and how many Indians can live in that suburb. South Brisbane used to be a Greek enclave. When I went to school up the road at State High, half the school was Greek. It's not anymore. And the idea that we should be afraid of people speaking their own language at home or in the Greek delicatessen to each other as they still do when I go down here, it's just madness. It's silly. It's not healthy.
Bill O'Chee, thanks for your time. Nice food for thought on this Friday leading into the weekend. I hope your banquet this Sunday is on time.
I'll try. Thank you very much, Kathy, and thank you to your listeners.
Bill O'Chee, former National Senator for Queensland. It is 9:30.